I'm Ruby, 32 years old, and secretly the CEO of a tech empire valued in the billions. My family remains unaware. For years, they have belittled my career choices, dismissed my ambitions, and treated me as the family disappointment. At Christmas dinner tonight, my sister Natalie smirked when my mother announced that I would be sleeping in the unheated garage while her boss got the guest room. My hands shook with silent fury under the table. For 5 years, I have concealed my success and endured their ridicule. They have no idea that tomorrow, everything will change. Before I share how I transitioned from sleeping in a freezing garage to witnessing my family's astonishment, please let me know where you're tuning in from and subscribe for more stories about standing your ground. I grew up in suburban Boston in a family that prioritized traditional markers of success. My parents, Valeria and William Montgomery, had very specific notions of what achievement entailed. Prestigious universities, conventional career paths, and the external validation that accompanied them. My older sister, Natalie, now 38, was the golden child who ticked every box on their list of expectations. She attended an Ivy League school, earned her MBA, and secured a marketing director role at Apex Industries, a well-established tech firm. Every family gathering turned into a showcase for her achievements. My younger brother, Ethan, 28, quickly adopted Natalie's blueprint. He studied finance, joined a reputable accounting firm, and recently became a junior partner. My parents glowed with pride whenever they spoke about him, their voices filled with approval. Then there was me, stuck in the middle, the square peg that they could never fit into their round hole of expectations. Since I was 10, I have been captivated by computers and coding. While other kids played video games, I was eager to learn how they functioned. I would spend hours dismantling old electronics and teaching myself programming languages. My parents saw this as just a phase I would eventually outgrow once I found my true passions. "Ruby, when will you join a real club?" my mother would inquire. Colleges prefer well-rounded students, not kids who spend all their time in their rooms. High school only deepened the divide between my interests and my family's expectations. While Natalie was the class president and prom queen, I initiated a coding club that met in the computer lab during lunch. My unconventional ideas, which teachers praised as innovative, were seen at home as a lack of focus. "You keep jumping from one project to another," my father lamented after I left a half-finished robot to focus on a website I was developing. "You need to follow through like your sister." What they didn't grasp was that I wasn't abandoning my ideas, I was evolving them. Each project taught me something valuable that I carried into the next. College was meant to be my turning point. I enrolled in business school to satisfy my parents, but I was also working on my startup idea. By my sophomore year, I realized I had something special, a groundbreaking cloud security solution that larger companies were already showing interest in. When I made the decision to drop out to pursue it full-time, my family reacted as if I had declared my intention to join a cult. "You are throwing your life away," my father said, his disappointment evident across the dinner table. "We didn't raise you to be a quitter. Even if this little project of yours succeeds, which it won't, what kind of life will that be?" My mother chimed in, "No stability, no benefits, no real career." Natalie, home for the weekend, shook her head with that condescending smile I had come to despise. "Not everyone is destined for success, Mom. Some people have to learn the hard way." After that, the comparisons became unrelenting. Every family gathering turned into a display of Natalie's accomplishments, contrasting sharply with my supposed failures. She would pull up in her high-end vehicle, clad in designer attire, chatting about her corner office and her team of subordinates. My parents proudly introduced her at neighborhood events, awkwardly shifting the topic whenever someone inquired about me. Natalie just closed a 7-figure marketing deal, my father would share with anyone willing to listen. "Ruby is still figuring things out," my mother would say when she had to acknowledge my presence. The pivotal moment occurred 3 years ago during Thanksgiving dinner. I had just secured $2 million in seed funding. However, when I attempted to share my news, Natalie cut in with her announcement about her promotion to senior director. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," my mother exclaimed, completely overlooking that I was in the middle of speaking. As everyone raised their glasses to toast Natalie, I made a decision. I would stop seeking their approval. More importantly, I would keep my growing success to myself. Let them think whatever they wanted. Someday, when the time was right, they would discover the truth. That night, I established Nex8 Solutions. What started as a security software startup quickly evolved into a comprehensive tech ecosystem that drew in major clients. Within 2 years, we had offices in 3 cities. By the 3rd year, we had gone international. I forged strategic partnerships, acquired smaller firms, and reinvested profits to drive exponential growth, all while keeping a low public profile. As CEO, I made the unconventional decision to remain anonymous in industry circles, working through trusted executives for public appearances. This was partly a business strategy that allowed us to be underestimated by competitors, but mostly it was personal. I wasn't ready for my family to find out. The emotional burden of living this double life was considerable. I owned a penthouse downtown but told my family I was renting a studio apartment. I drove a decade-old Honda to family gatherings while my collection of luxury cars remained in my private garage. I faced constant inquiries about when I would secure a legitimate job while leading board meetings for a company worth billions. 5 years after leaving school, I executed our most significant move. It was the acquisition of Apex Industries, the very place where Natalie had established her career. The irony was not lost on me. Soon, unbeknownst to me, my golden child sister would find herself working for the family disappointment. The acquisition documents for Apex Industries landed on my desk exactly 1 week before Christmas. I sat at my desk, my fingers gliding over the embossed logo now marked with a Nexitech label beneath it. 5 years of effort had led to this moment. The company that had fueled my sister's superiority complex was now under my control. "Would you like me to prepare the announcement for the Apex employees?" my assistant Diane inquired. I shook my head. "Not until after the holidays. Let them enjoy Christmas without the stress of corporate changes." What I didn't express was my desire for one last family gathering with the old dynamics still in place. One final Christmas with them, blissfully unaware of the impending changes. The annual invitation from my parents had come through a text, as punctual as ever: "Christmas Eve dinner at 6. Let us know if you're coming." There was no warmth, no excitement about the thought of seeing me, just logistics. I replied with my acceptance, even though every instinct urged me to decline. 5 years of conditioning had prepared me for what to expect. Hours of Natalie's bragging, my parents' barely concealed disappointment, and Ethan's quiet loyalty to the family hierarchy that firmly placed me at the bottom. Despite owning a collection of luxury cars, I drove my reliable Honda Civic to my parents' suburban home on Christmas Eve. The unassuming vehicle was part of my disguise, but it also acted as my shield. It reminded me that I had nothing to prove to them and that their approval no longer defined my value. I pulled into the driveway behind a flashy Jaguar I didn't recognize. Inside, I discovered my answer. Natalie had invited a guest, Harold Winter, who is the senior vice president of marketing at Apex Industries, her boss, and the man she had been trying to impress for years. "Ruby, do you remember Harold?" Natalie asked, even though we had never met. She was wearing a red designer dress that likely cost more than my monthly salary. Harold stood next to her in a perfectly tailored suit, a Rolex shining on his wrist. "Actually, we haven't had the pleasure," I said, reaching out my hand. I had intentionally dressed down in jeans and a simple sweater, playing my role perfectly. "Ruby, there you are," my mother called from the kitchen doorway. "I could use some help with the vegetables. Natalie and Harold are catching up with your father in the living room." And there it was, the familiar routine. Natalie entertained in the living room while I was assigned to kitchen duty. I quietly chopped carrots and peeled potatoes, listening to the laughter from the other room. So, how's the new corner office, Harold? My father asked. Natalie tells us the view of the harbor is spectacular. It certainly is, William. Although I hear our enigmatic new CEO has an even better one, Harold responded. My ears perked up at this. Technically, I did have a better view from the top floor of the Nexitec Tower downtown. Have you met this new CEO yet? My father asked. No one has, Natalie interjected. He's like a ghost. He makes all these decisions that shake things up but never shows his face. Her face, I whispered to myself, smiling slightly at the carrot I was chopping. Ruby, how's that little website thing you were working on? My father suddenly called out, remembering I was there. Any luck with it? I bit my tongue. My little website thing had just acquired Natalie's company for $3 billion. It's coming along, I replied non-committally. You know, there's an entry-level marketing position opening up at Apex next quarter, Natalie said, stepping into the kitchen to refill her wine glass. Nothing fancy, but it would give you some real experience. I could put in a word, she said. The condescension in her voice made my jaw tighten. If only she realized that I would be evaluating her performance next month. Thanks, but I'm fine with my current situation, I managed to say. Suit yourself, she shrugged, heading back to the living room. As I wrapped up the dinner preparations, I caught bits of my parents' conversation. At least Ethan is making something of himself, my mother whispered. I worry about Ruby, 32 and still pursuing internet dreams, she added. Natalie has tried to assist her, my father replied. But you can't help someone who refuses to help themselves. I closed my eyes, allowing the familiar pain to wash over me. 5 years of success had shielded me from caring too much about their opinions, yet some wounds never truly heal. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my CFO regarding the Apex transition. Finalized the retention packages for key executives. Harold Winters is on the list as per your instructions. I couldn't help but smile. Harold had no clue that his future at the company was already being determined by the woman chopping vegetables in this kitchen. The final straw came just before dinner. I had stepped into the hallway to quickly check an urgent email when I overheard Natalie and my mother chatting in the guest bedroom. We've put Harold in here, of course, my mother was saying. Your father and I are in our room. Ethan's in his old room, and you'll have yours. What about Ruby, Natalie, she asked, though her tone indicated she already knew the answer. Well, the couch in the den is too short, and we're using it to stage the gifts anyway, my mother responded. I thought the garage would suffice. It's just for one night. Perfect. Natalie laughed. The garage suits her. She's accustomed to roughing it with that startup lifestyle. My blood ran cold. The garage in Boston in December with no heating. My hands shook with silent fury as I slipped back into the kitchen, pretending I hadn't overheard. 5 years spent building an empire while facing their ridicule, and they were sending me off to a cold garage for Christmas Eve. The dining room sparkled with festive perfection. Ruby glasses reflected the light from the chandelier. Exquisite china plates rested on the family heirloom tablecloth, and a centerpiece of pine and holly stretched down the table. It was a scene straight out of a Christmas catalog, complete with the assigned seating that put me at the far end, almost in a different time zone from the rest of the conversation. My mother had placed Harold at the head of the table, with my father at the opposite end. Natalie was seated to Harold's right, my mother to his left, and Ethan next to Natalie. I found myself at the furthest point beside an empty chair, a physical representation of my emotional distance from the family. To his credit, Harold appeared somewhat uneasy with the seating arrangement. Several times, as dishes were passed around, he made eye contact with me, a curious expression on his face. So, Ruby, he asked during a lull in the conversation, what exactly do you do in tech? Natalie chimed in, you're interested in that field. Before I could respond, Natalie let out a laugh that she tried to mask as a cough. Oh, Ruby dabbles in web stuff, she said dismissively. Nothing on the scale you're familiar with at Apex. I work in security solutions, I replied, locking eyes with Harold. Mainly cloud infrastructure. A flicker of genuine interest crossed his face. Really? That's actually one of our growth areas at Apex. We just acquired a smaller security firm last quarter. What platforms do you specialize in? Harold. Natalie interrupted, placing her hand on his arm. You don't need to discuss work with Ruby. Instead, tell them about the Tokyo expansion. And just like that, the conversation shifted. I watched as Harold hesitated, then followed Natalie's cue, diving into a story about Apex's international growth. My brief moment of professional recognition faded away. The dinner unfolded as it usually does. Natalie took charge of the conversation, sharing tales about her significant clients and her strategic insights. My parents listened intently, nodding in approval and smiling proudly. Ethan would occasionally interject with his own successes, receiving the same kind of validation that my rare comments did, which were often met with polite but uninterested responses before someone swiftly changed the topic. It was a routine we had mastered over many family gatherings. The food is delicious, Valeria Harold remarked, finishing his second serving of ham. You've really outdone yourself. Thank you, Harold, my mother replied with a radiant smile. It's wonderful to have everyone home for Christmas, and having you with us is such a delight. Speaking of which, my father interjected, we should talk about sleeping arrangements. It's getting late. My stomach nodded. Here it comes. Harold, we've prepared the guest room for you, my mother announced. Fresh sheets and towels are in the ensuite bathroom. Natalie, you'll have your old room, of course, my father continued. And Ethan's already settled in his. All eyes turned to me, and I noticed the discomfort flicker across my parents' faces. Ruby, my mother started, her voice adopting a falsely cheerful tone. We've set up the garage for you. There's a camping cot and plenty of blankets. I know it's not perfect, but it's just for one night. Natalie smirked behind her wine glass, while Ethan suddenly found his mashed potatoes very interesting. The garage isn't heated, I said flatly. You can use one of the space heaters, my father suggested, as if this were a generous offer. It won't be that bad. Harold looked genuinely taken aback. The garage? But it's freezing outside. Ruby doesn't mind, Natalie quickly chimed in. She's always been the adventurous one, right, sis? The condescension in her tone made my blood boil. At that moment, I realized she had planned this, bringing Harold specifically to ensure I would be the one displaced. I'm confident we can come up with another solution, Harold suggested, appearing uneasy. It's all right, I replied, my tone steadier than my feelings. I have work to finish tonight anyway. After dinner, I accompanied my mother to the garage to check out my sleeping arrangements. What I found was even worse than I had anticipated. The area was filled with storage boxes, old workout gear, and neglected Christmas decorations. In the middle was a drooping camping cot with a flimsy mattress. A heap of mismatched blankets was piled at one end, alongside a small space heater that looked like it belonged to the 90s. It's just for one night, my mother reiterated, avoiding my gaze. And you're always on that laptop of yours anyway. You probably won't even notice. I remained silent as she went back into the warmth of the house. Once the door shut behind her, I perched on the edge of the cot and took out my phone. The temperature read 28 degrees. Inside the garage, it might be a bit warmer, but not by much. I opened my laptop, entering my password to secure the screen, as was my routine, and noticed an urgent message from my executive team. They needed my approval on the final details of the Apex acquisition before the morning announcement. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., a company-wide email would be sent to all Apex employees, including Natalie and Harold, announcing Nexitech as their new parent company. It would also introduce me as the CEO. As I went through the documents, a plan started to take shape in my mind. Why wait until tomorrow? Why not seize control of this narrative now? My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant. Ready to send the executive briefing tonight instead of tomorrow morning if you give the go-ahead. All department heads at Apex will be informed at the same time. I glanced at the clock. It was 8:30 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Harold and Natalie would both get the notification as senior staff members. Harold's response, in particular, would be hard to conceal. My finger hovered over the reply button. 5 years spent in hiding, enduring their disregard and disrespect, 5 years of holding back and playing it safe. Was I truly going to allow them to send me to a freezing garage on Christmas Eve? The garage door swung open, and in walked Harold, looking a bit sheepish. Sorry to intrude, he said. I just wanted to see if you were all right out here. It's really cold. Before I could reply, his phone buzzed with an incoming email. Then it chimed again and again. Harold frowned as he pulled his phone from his pocket. That's odd. Several urgent messages from the executive team on Christmas Eve. He opened the first email, and I noticed his expression change from confusion to shock. This says Apex has been acquired by Nexate Tech Solutions, he exclaimed, looking at me. Effective immediately, but that can't be right. We would have been informed. His phone rang, and he answered it without hesitation. Harold Winters. Yes, I just saw the emails. No, I had no idea. The CEO wants to talk to me now on Christmas Eve. As he listened to the voice on the other end, his eyes widened, and he slowly turned to face me. Really? He was finally looking at me. Recognition spread across his face as he pieced it together. She's right here, he said into the phone, his voice barely a whisper. The garage suddenly felt much colder as Harold stared at me, phone still pressed to his ear. I could hear my chief operating officer's tiny voice asking if he was sure he was actually with Ruby Montgomery, CEO of Nexatech Solutions. I believe I am, Harold replied cautiously, his gaze never leaving my face. I extended my hand for the phone. May I? With mechanical movements, he handed me his cell. The moment felt surreal, sitting on a sagging cot in my parents' cluttered garage, about to break 5 years of deception. James, I said, using my executive voice, the one my family had never heard. Yes, I'm with Harold now. The timeline has moved up. Please proceed with the full announcement to the executive team tonight. We'll address the rest of the staff tomorrow as planned. I could almost sense James' confusion over the phone. Tonight, ma'am, is Christmas Eve. I'm aware of the date, I replied, observing Harold's face grow more and more pale. Some circumstances have changed. Please proceed immediately. After I ended the call, I handed the phone back to Harold, who took it as if it could bite him. You're the CEO of Nexatech, he stated, not as a question, but as a confirmation to himself. You bought Apex. I did, I confirmed, shutting my laptop. But he gestured vaguely at my surroundings. The garage, the camping cot, the space heater, battling against the December chill. Sleeping in a garage on Christmas Eve, I finished for him. Yes, it seems so. The door to the house opened again, and Natalie appeared, her own phone clutched in her hand. Her face was devoid of color. Harold, did you receive the emails? Something's happening with the company. They're saying we've been acquired by. Her voice trailed off as she noticed the look on Harold's face, then followed his gaze to me. What's going on? Perhaps we should discuss this inside, I suggested, rising from the cot. It's quite cold out here. In a daze, Harold and Natalie followed me back into the house. The warm air greeted my face as we entered the kitchen, where my parents and Ethan were tidying up after dinner. Done settling in already? My mother asked without glancing up from the dishes. There's been a change of plans, I said calmly. We need to talk. Something in my tone must have registered because my mother turned around, dishcloth still in hand. My father looked up from drying a serving platter, and Ethan paused, loading the dishwasher. "What's wrong?" my father asked, looking between me and the shocked expressions on Natalie and Harold's faces. Harold's phone rang again, shattering the tension. He glanced at the screen, then at me, clearly uncertain about what to do. "You should answer that," I told him. "It's likely the CFO with the details of the retention package." His eyebrows shot up, yet he answered the call, putting it on speaker, possibly without even realizing it. "Harold, it's Greg from finance. Have you seen the announcement? Nexitech has acquired us, and the CEO wants immediate meetings with all department heads. They're saying she's been working undercover or something. Do you know anything about this?" The kitchen fell completely silent. 5 pairs of eyes were fixed on me. "Greg, I'll call you back," Harold said faintly, ending the call. "Ruby," Natalie began, her voice unusually high. "What is he talking about? What do you know about this?" I glanced around at my family in the kitchen, where I'd spent countless holidays feeling invisible. The moment I had both dreaded and anticipated for 5 years had finally arrived. "I'm the CEO and founder of Nexitech Solutions," I stated simply. "As of last week, I own Apex Industries." The silence that followed was absolute. My mother's dishcloth slipped from her fingers and fell to the floor. My father's mouth opened and closed without making a sound. Ethan froze mid-motion, a plate suspended between his hands and the dishwasher. Natalie broke the silence with a sharp, disbelieving laugh. "That's not possible. Nexate is worth billions. It's one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country." "Yes," I agreed, "it is. But you dropped out of college," my father stammered. "You've been working on some small startup." "That small startup was Nexitech," I clarified. "It hasn't been small for quite some time." "You're lying," Natalie accused, though doubt had begun to creep into her voice. "This is some kind of joke." In response, I pulled out my phone and opened a secure app that connected directly to the Nexate system. I entered my authorization code and turned the screen toward them, displaying the dashboard that only the CEO could access. "This is real-time data from our global operations," I explained. "Our current valuation is just over 11 billion. We have 7,000 employees across 4 continents, and as of last week, that includes everyone at Apex Industries." Harold had started to nod slowly, as if pieces were coming together. "The security advancements, the management, the shift towards cloud infrastructure. That was all you." "Every single part of it," I confirmed. "But why didn't you tell us?" My mother finally found her voice and asked. "All this time, we believed. You thought I was a failure," I completed her thought. "You made that abundantly clear. At every holiday, every family gathering, every phone call. We were worried," my father protested weakly. "We wanted security for you." "No," I corrected him. Years of repressed feelings finally breaking free. "You wanted me to be like Natalie, to follow a path you understood. When I chose differently, you concluded I was lost. You never once inquired about what I was building or showed any genuine interest in my work." "That's not fair," Natalie interrupted. "We tried to assist you. I offered you job connections. You offered me entry-level roles and spoke to me with condescension," I countered. "You brought your boss to Christmas dinner and had me sent to the garage so you could impress him." Harold flinched at this, looking very uncomfortable. "I didn't know you'd be in the garage," he said softly. "I would never have agreed to stay if I had known." My mother stepped forward, her expression changing to something I rarely witnessed, directed at me with respect and perhaps a hint of fear. "Ruby, sweetheart, if we had known about your company, of course, we would have supported you. We've always wanted what's best." "Please don't," I interrupted, raising a hand. "Don't pretend that you would have treated me differently if you'd known I was wealthy. That only makes it worse." The kitchen fell silent once more. My phone kept buzzing with notifications as the news spread through the executive ranks at both companies. Outside, snow had started to fall, dusting the window panes with white. "So what happens now?" Ethan asked, speaking for the first time. "With Apex, I mean." "Business continues as usual for most employees," I explained, thankful for the practical question. "There will be some changes at the executive level, but there won't be any mass layoffs." Natalie's complexion shifted from pale to gray, and I wondered, am I getting fired? The question lingered in the atmosphere. 5 years ago, I might have relished this moment, having the power to decide my sister's future. Now, it simply felt empty. "No, Natalie, you're not being let go," I said. "Your marketing strategies have been successful, despite our personal differences, but starting next month, you'll be reporting to a new director." A wave of relief washed over her face, quickly replaced by a new concern. "Will everyone find out that we are sisters?" "That's your choice," I replied. "I've kept my identity private for business reasons, not just personal ones. That will change now, but we can discuss how to manage our relationship at work." My father cleared his throat, clearly struggling to reconcile his view of me with this new reality. "Where do you live?" he suddenly asked. "You always mentioned having a small apartment downtown." "I have a penthouse on the waterfront," I replied, "along with homes in New York and San Francisco where our other main offices are located." My mother sank into a kitchen chair, looking overwhelmed. "All this time, we had no idea." "That was intentional," I admitted. "After years of trying to prove myself to you, I decided to stop. The company became my priority instead." Harold's phone rang again, and he glanced at me apologetically before stepping into the hallway to take the call. I could hear him speaking in his executive tone, suddenly very much the SVP addressing a crisis. Natalie looked at me as if she were seeing a stranger. In many ways, she was. The crystal-clear image she had of the little sister she had alternately ignored and condescended to had never truly existed. "I suppose I should retrieve my belongings from the garage," I said, breaking the awkward silence. "I'll find a hotel for tonight." "No," my mother exclaimed, jumping to her feet. "You can't leave now. It's Christmas Eve, and your family." The irony of her sudden concern wasn't lost on anyone in the room. "The guest room is all set," my father said quickly. "Harold can use the den or the garage if needed." I firmly stated that I wouldn't put anyone in that garage, not even for a single night. Harold came back, tucking his phone into his pocket. That was the board chairman. "They've scheduled an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning." He looked at me with newfound respect. "Your team is quick," he remarked. "Efficiency has always been a key focus at Nexitech," I responded. The atmosphere in the room had completely changed. My family stood awkwardly in their own kitchen, suddenly uncertain of their roles. The power dynamics that had shaped our relationships for years had been overturned in just 15 minutes. "I need some fresh air," Natalie said, suddenly making her way to the back door. After a brief moment of hesitation, I followed her. The back porch was blanketed in a thin layer of fresh snow, sparkling under the porch light. Natalie leaned against the railing, her breath creating clouds in the chilly air. "Are you really going to keep me on?" she asked without turning around. "Or was that just for show in front of everyone?" I assured her, joining her at the railing, I meant what I said. "Your work is valuable, Natalie. Our past doesn't change that." She nodded slowly, still avoiding my gaze. "I've treated you terribly." "Yes," I simply agreed. "You have, and now you're my boss." She let out a short, humorless laugh. "Oh, the irony." "Life is full of surprises," I replied. Finally, she turned to look at me. "Why didn't you tell me all these years while I was bragging about Apex, knowing you could buy and sell us 10 times over? Why let me embarrass myself?" I took a moment to think about her question, searching for an honest response. At first, it was about self-preservation. The company was expanding but still fragile. Then it became a habit. And perhaps a part of me was waiting. Waiting for what? She asked. For one of you to notice me, I admitted, to show interest in my life without knowing what I had achieved. To appreciate me for who I am, not just for my success. Tears filled Natalie's eyes, a sight I hadn't witnessed since our childhood. I don't believe I know how to do that with anyone anymore. It was possibly the most sincere thing she had ever expressed to me. I went back inside to grab my overnight bag from the garage, passing by my astonished family members who appeared to be frozen. Upon returning to the house, I found Harold gathering his things from the guest room. I've arranged for a car service, he informed me. I think it's best if I give your family some space tonight. You don't have to go, I replied. I think I must, he responded with a wry smile. Besides, I have about 100 emails to respond to before morning. Apparently, my new boss is quite demanding. For the first time that evening, I felt a genuine smile begin to form on my lips. Is that so? Her reputation precedes her, he affirmed, then added more seriously, for what it's worth, you've created something extraordinary. The security framework you designed has transformed the industry. I'm genuinely excited to see where you take Apex. With that unexpected show of support, Harold left, leaving me alone with my family to deal with the aftermath of the first revelation. The living room had never been so quiet. We sat in our usual spots, yet everything felt different. My parents were in their matching recliners. Ethan was perched on the arm of the sofa. Natalie was curled up in the corner of the love seat, and I was on the ottoman, all of us divided by more than just physical distance. Finally, my father broke the silence. A tech empire. It wasn't exactly a question, but I nodded anyway. Yes. And you've been managing this company all this time while we thought. My mother trailed off, unable to finish her thought. While you thought I was failing, I completed for her. Yes. Natalie gazed at her hands. Why keep it a secret for so long? Why not just tell us? The question seemed straightforward, but the answer was intricate, filled with years of pain and disappointment. Initially, it was because I needed to prove it to myself, I explained. I hesitated to share my ambitious plans for fear of failure. However, as the company expanded, a realization struck me. You had never expressed any interest in my work before. So, why would money alter that? What I truly sought was not your validation of my financial success, but your belief in me and my vision. We always had faith in you, my mother weakly countered. No, I replied firmly yet calmly. You believed in a version of me that never came to be, the daughter who would follow in Natalie's footsteps. When I chose a different path, your faith disappeared. My father shifted in his seat, looking uneasy. We were worried about your future, he said. That's what parents do. I pointed out the distinction between concern and dismissal. You never once asked me to clarify my business model or my objectives. You simply assumed I was just pretending to be an entrepreneur. Ethan cleared his throat. I recall when you attempted to share details about your first funding round. Mom interrupted to ask Natalie about her new car. My mother turned red. I don't recall that. I do, Natalie quietly interjected. I remember thinking it was okay because whatever Ruby was doing couldn't possibly be as significant as my promotion. That admission lingered in the air between us. Throughout our years of competition, Natalie had never recognized her part in belittling me. What exactly does Nexitech do? Ethan asked, his voice filled with genuine curiosity. Aside from owning Apex, I felt a flicker of hope for the first time that evening. Here was a real inquiry about my work, not my financial status. We began with advanced cloud security, I explained. The security protocols I created became the industry standard within 2 years. From there, we branched out into integrated systems management, data protection, and eventually artificial intelligence applications for enterprises. Ethan nodded as he absorbed this information. That's why Apex was a strategic acquisition. Their hardware enhances your software ecosystem. Exactly, I confirmed, impressed by his quick grasp of the concept. And you accomplished all this without a college degree? My father asked, his tone difficult to read. The skills I required, I taught myself, I mentioned. For everything else, I hired individuals who were more knowledgeable than I was. That's the hallmark of effective CEOs. My mother abruptly stood up and went into the kitchen. When she came back, she held a magazine that had been hidden beneath a pile of mail. The cover displayed a silhouette with the headline, Nextstate's Mysterious Founder, Tech's Most Influential Invisible Leader. This came with Williams' Business Journal last month, she said, her tone tense. I never connected it to you. I never even read the article. The irony was not lost on me. Proof of my success had literally been sitting on their coffee table, unread and unnoticed. Does this mean you're wealthy? My father inquired awkwardly. Yes, I replied simply. Very much so. Natalie made a sound that was a mix of a laugh and a sob. All those times I offered to help you financially to get you back on your feet. Oh my God, you must have been laughing at me. I wasn't laughing, I assured her. In fact, it was painful to be perceived as someone who needed saving while I was building something I was proud of. Are you going to fire me? She suddenly asked, expressing the fear that had clearly been eating away at her since the revelation. I already told you no, I reminded her. Your job is secure, although your reporting structure will change. She nodded, relief flooding her face. I don't deserve that kindness from you. It's not kindness, I corrected her. It's business. You're skilled at what you do, regardless of our personal history. My father leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. I don't know what to say, Ruby. We've been mistaken about you. Completely mistaken. It was perhaps the closest thing to an apology I had ever heard from him. I kept the truth from you, I admitted. That's on me. But we gave you reason to, my mother said softly. We made you feel like you had to conceal your success instead of sharing it. An uncomfortable silence enveloped the room once more. Years of family dynamics don't vanish in a single evening, no matter how revealing. Where do we go from here? Ethan finally posed the practical question. As always, it was the inquiry that loomed over all of us. How can you rebuild relationships that are founded on fundamental misunderstandings? How do you progress when the past has been so thoroughly rewritten? I don't know, I confessed. This isn't how I intended to share this with you. I'm still trying to process it myself. Will you stay tonight? My mother inquired, a hint of desperation in her tone. Not in the garage, of course. The guest room is available for you. The idea of staying, of attempting to sleep under this roof with all these swirling emotions, was daunting. Yet, the alternative of driving away on Christmas Eve felt just as wrong. I'll stay, I resolved. But I need to make some calls first. The announcement has been made to the executive team, and there will be inquiries. My father nodded, a newfound respect evident in his gaze. Naturally, you have a company to manage. His simple acknowledgement of my responsibilities, something I had never received from him before, felt oddly validating. As I stood to grab my laptop from the garage, Natalie also got up. I'll assist you in moving your things to the guest room, she offered, extending an olive branch through a simple act of kindness. Together, we walked to the garage in silence. The space felt different now, the indignity of the accommodation even more pronounced in light of the evening's revelations. I'm sorry about this, Natalie said, indicating the camping cot. It was my idea. I thought it would be amusing to make me sleep in a freezing garage on Christmas Eve, I questioned, raising an eyebrow. She had the decency to look embarrassed. It sounds harsh when you phrase it that way. Because it was harsh, I replied plainly. Whether I was a struggling entrepreneur or a billionaire CEO, it was unkind. She nodded, acknowledging the truth in this. I've spent so many years viewing you as competition rather than as my sister. I don't know how to change that. Perhaps that's where we begin, I suggested, gathering my overnight bag. By not competing, by simply being sisters. As we stepped back into the house, Harold sent me a text saying, "Car service here." We were heading downtown. The board was briefed on the situation and was fully supportive of your leadership. Merry Christmas, boss. The message made me smile. At least in a professional sense, the transition was going smoothly. My mother had prepared the guest room with fresh towels and had turned down the bed as a peace offering regarding household chores. My father had lit a fire in the fireplace, warming the home as if to apologize for the coldness it had shown me earlier. That night, as I lay in the guest bed instead of the garage cot, I thought about the day's unexpected turn. 5 years of hiding came to an end in an instant. 5 years of separation from my family were bridged by a revelation I hadn't anticipated. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, including the formal announcement to all Apex employees, the press releases that would publicly declare my role as CEO, and the inevitable questions about why I had stayed anonymous for so long. But tonight, in this quiet moment, I allowed myself to feel something unexpected: relief. The burden of deception had been lifted. Whatever lay ahead, I would confront it as my true self, no longer dividing my life into the successful CEO and the disappointing daughter. Across the hall, I could hear Natalie on the phone, likely speaking with colleagues at Apex, her voice low but urgent. Down the hall, my parents' soft voices drifted through their door, probably discussing the stranger their middle child had become. We were still a fractured family, but for the first time in years, we were beginning to see each other clearly. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. It wasn't even understanding, but it was a start. Christmas morning arrived with an awkward uncertainty lingering in the air like the aroma of brewing coffee. I woke up early, used to starting my day before sunrise, and found my father already in the kitchen, staring into his mug as if it held answers to questions he hadn't yet thought of. "Merry Christmas," I said tentatively. He looked up, startled. "Merry Christmas, Ruby. Could I have some coffee, please?" He poured me a cup with an unusual level of care, as if he were serving a distinguished guest instead of his own daughter. "Did you sleep well?" I replied, better than I would have in the garage, unable to resist a little jab, which made him wince. About that, it was inexcusable. "I want you to know I didn't realize how cold it was out there." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was more acknowledgement than I usually received. I accepted it with a nod. "I have some calls to make before everyone wakes up," I said, glancing at my phone. "The formal announcement goes to all Apex employees at 9. "Of course," he replied, then added awkwardly, "Should I leave you alone for privacy?" The question showed how little he understood about my life, my work, my daily routine. "No, it's fine. I'm used to working anywhere." He watched me with newfound curiosity as I set up my laptop at the kitchen table, the same spot where I had done homework as a child. As I answered emails and approved final communications, I could feel his gaze on me, seeing me truly working for the first time. By 8:30, the rest of the family had trickled into the kitchen. My mother fussed over breakfast with extra care, creating elaborate French toast and fresh fruit that hadn't been part of our original meal plan. Natalie checked her phone obsessively, waiting for the official announcement. Ethan observed us all with the careful neutrality of someone watching a delicate negotiation. "Should we do presents now or after breakfast?" my mother asked, trying to establish some normalcy. "After is fine," I said, closing my laptop as 9 o'clock approached. "The announcement is going out now." Almost on cue, Natalie's phone chimed with an incoming email. She read it silently, her expression unreadable, then looked up at me. "It's official," she said. "Nexitech Solutions has acquired Apex Industries effective immediately. Ruby Montgomery, founder and CEO of Nexitech, will address all employees after the holiday." My parents exchanged looks, the reality of my situation settling in a new Montgomery, my father reiterated. You kept our family name. Naturally, I replied, regardless of our differences, I'm still a Montgomery. A flicker crossed his face, perhaps a hint of pride. Breakfast unfolded with awkward conversation, everyone carefully sidestepping the landmines of past grievances while trying to adjust to our new circumstances. When we finally gathered around the Christmas tree, the difference from previous years was striking. The gifts beneath the tree told their own tale. There were the usual thoughtfully chosen presents for Natalie and Ethan, and the perfunctory items for me, picked without much consideration or understanding of my tastes. A generic scarf, bath products from a mall kiosk, a popular novel. I had no desire to read. What no one expected was the elegant stack of gifts I had brought along, initially intending to leave them behind when I headed to a hotel. Each was wrapped in simple yet luxurious paper, containing gifts I had chosen months in advance. You brought gifts? My mother inquired, surprise clear in her tone. Of course, I answered. It's Christmas. One by one, I handed them out. For my father, a rare first edition of his favorite economic book, signed by the author. For my mother, a handcrafted jewelry box with a necklace from a boutique designer she had once mentioned admiring. For Ethan, a high-end watch he had long desired but would never purchase for himself. And for Natalie, a leather portfolio embossed with her initials, filled with Japanese stationery she had fallen in love with during a business trip to Tokyo last year. Their expressions showed shock as they unwrapped these carefully chosen gifts. Proof that even though they had overlooked my life, I had been attentive to theirs. How did you know about the necklace? My mother asked, touching the delicate pendant. I only mentioned it once years ago. I listen, I replied simply. I always have. My father cleared his throat, clearly touched by his gift. This must have been nearly impossible to find. Not impossible, I corrected him. It just took some persistence. Natalie ran her fingers over the embossed leather. You remembered about Tokyo. You talked about that stationery shop for weeks afterward. I reminded her how the paper felt unlike anything you'd used before. They exchanged awkward glances, the difference between their hastily bought gifts and my carefully selected ones, emphasizing the imbalance in our relationships. We have something else for you, my mother said, suddenly vanishing into her bedroom. She came back with a small, quickly wrapped package. We got this morning. Your father went to the 24-hour pharmacy while you were on your calls. Inside was a silver frame holding a printout of the magazine article about Nexitech, the one they had overlooked until now. We thought maybe you could sign it, my father said awkwardly, since you're the mysterious CEO they wrote about. It was a clumsy gesture, but the first acknowledgement of my professional identity they had ever made. I accepted it with a small smile. Thank you. As the morning went on, something changed in our interactions. My parents started asking questions about Nexitech, initially hesitant. Then, with increasing interest, as I explained the company's journey, Ethan chimed in with thoughtful questions about business strategy. Even Natalie, after getting reassurance about her role, began to engage with genuine curiosity. So all those times you were on your laptop during holidays, you were actually running a billion-dollar company? Ethan asked, incredulous. Pretty much, I confirmed. Last Thanksgiving, I was finalizing a major acquisition while you all thought I was just playing games to avoid conversation. Is that why you always left early? My mother asked. Because of work. I hesitated, balancing honesty with kindness. Partly work? Yes. And partly because these gatherings were challenging for me. Due to how we treated you, my father admitted, catching me off guard with his honesty. Yes, I confessed. It's tough to endure hours of feeling like the family's disappointment. A heavy silence enveloped the room. My mother brushed away a tear. I found some old photos, she suddenly said, pulling an album from the bookshelf. From when you were in high school and involved in that computer club. She flipped to a page that displayed a teenage version of me alongside a group of classmates proudly showcasing a coding project that had won a regional competition. A competition my family chose not to attend. "You won first place," she remarked, her finger tracing the ribbon visible in the picture. I remember now. We skipped it because Natalie had a volleyball tournament that same weekend. "It's fine," I replied automatically, the dismissal of my achievement so familiar it barely registered. "No, it's not fine," my father interrupted. "We should have been there. At least one of us should have been." Natalie glanced at the photo over my mother's shoulder. "I had no idea you were involved in things like this. I was so focused on my own activities." "You were encouraged to be," I pointed out without blame. We all were influenced by the family dynamics. The conversation flowed through lunch, slowly addressing decades of misunderstandings. There were no dramatic apologies or tearful reconciliations, just a gradual recognition of the patterns that had shaped our relationships. By late afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from Herald Company. "A wide email has been sent out. Your inbox is overflowing with congratulations and inquiries. The PR team is managing press questions. Everything is proceeding smoothly." I showed the message to Natalie, whose anxiety about the workplace transition was evident. "It's going to be fine," I reassured her. "The integration team will take care of most of the changes. Your daily work won't be drastically different. Except that my little sister is now the big boss," she said with a sly smile, the first genuine one I'd seen from her in years. "That is true," I acknowledged. As the evening drew near, we came together for a more casual dinner compared to the previous night's formal gathering. The conversation flowed freely, no longer held back by secrets and pretenses. My father inquired about Nexate's plans for expansion. My mother asked about my residences in other cities. Ethan showed interest in my management style. Most unexpectedly, Natalie recounted stories about Apex that invited my insights, bridging our professional realms. She confessed that the rollout of the security platform was a nightmare from the marketing standpoint. We struggled to articulate the benefits clearly enough for the average user. "This has been a widespread challenge in the industry." I concurred. "It's a matter of technical features versus user benefits." At Nexatech, we flip the development process on its head. We begin with the user experience and then work our way back to the technical details. "That's brilliant," she acknowledged, a tone of professional respect entering her voice for the first time. For a fleeting moment, I caught a glimpse of what could have been a relationship founded on mutual respect instead of rivalry. I realized it wasn't too late to cultivate that now. After dinner, as we relaxed in the living room with coffee, my father posed the question that had clearly been on his mind all day. "Why did you choose to keep your success hidden from us?" Specifically, I understand the business reasons for anonymity, but why not share it with your family? This was the crux of the matter, the question that had lingered beneath all our interactions since the revelation. "I needed to know if you could ever see me for who I truly am, not just for my accomplishments," I replied candidly. I wanted to be appreciated for my ideas, my vision, my character, rather than my financial status or title. "And we failed that test," my mother said softly. "Yes," I confirmed. "Until yesterday, you did." "And now," Ethan asked, "what does this mean for us moving forward?" I glanced around at their faces, so familiar yet somehow different in the light of our newfound understanding. "Now we begin anew," I mentioned, not ignoring the past but also not allowing it to control our future. As Christmas Day came to an end, I discovered something surprising had taken place. The unveiling of my secret did not yield the validation or victory I had envisioned. Instead, it opened up a space for something far more precious, the chance for genuine connection. We were not yet a healed family. There were still years of pain and miscommunication to confront, and behaviors to unlearn. However, for the first time since I was a teenager with a dream that no one believed in, I felt acknowledged by my family. Not entirely, not flawlessly, but sincerely, it marked a new beginning. 6 months after that pivotal Christmas, I found myself on the deck of my lakeside home, observing my family arrive for our summer reunion. The change in our relationships was evident in the comfortable way they approached my door, no longer awkward or hesitant in my presence. My mother greeted me with a warm embrace, a stark contrast to the formal hellos of the past. "The house is stunning, Ruby. You have to give me the complete tour this time." My father came next, carrying a bottle of champagne and a tech magazine. "You made the cover again. Thought we could add it to the collection." Since Christmas, my parents had set up a special shelf in their home to showcase articles and awards related to my work. Their pride was now openly displayed, a shift from the past when it was reserved solely for Natalie and Ethan. Our weekly family calls had become a regular part of our routines. No longer just obligatory check-ins, but real connections. My parents now proudly referred to me as their entrepreneur daughter to friends and neighbors, sometimes even getting a bit carried away with their excitement about my accomplishments. Natalie was the last to arrive, looking more at ease than I had seen her in years. After the acquisition, she had initially found it challenging to adjust to her new role in the corporate structure, but she eventually found her balance. Our professional relationship had grown alongside our personal one, with each aspect reinforcing the other. "The marketing team is excited about the new product direction," she mentioned while we prepared dinner together, an activity we had never shared until this year. "The focus groups are responding just as you anticipated." "Your presentation to the board last month was outstanding," I responded. It was clear, convincing, and supported by solid data. She beamed at the professional recognition. "I learned from the best." Ethan entered the kitchen with his laptop. "Can I run something by you? I'm considering starting a financial consultancy aimed at tech startups. I've put together a business plan." This was also a new development. After Christmas, Ethan had come to me for career guidance, which eventually led him to pursue his own entrepreneurial dreams. I had become the mentor he sought, and our relationship deepened through our shared professional interests. As we gathered around the table on the deck with a view of the water, I reflected on how far we had come in just 6 months. It wasn't just about the external changes, the blending of our professional and personal lives, but also the internal transformations that allowed us to understand each other better. "I've been pondering something my father said as we wrapped up dinner, relating to what you mentioned at Christmas about wanting to be appreciated for who you are rather than what you've accomplished." I nodded, recalling the heartfelt conversation that initiated our healing. I realized that was what I had always desired as well. He went on, "I wanted my value to be determined by my achievements, my status. I imposed that belief on all of you, especially you, Ruby, because you challenged that value system the most." It was perhaps the most profound insight my father had ever shared regarding our relationship. "I think we were all ensnared in that trap," Natalie interjected, evaluating our worth based on external indicators. "I was so terrified of losing my status as the successful one that I couldn't celebrate anyone else's successes, especially my own," I admitted. "Especially yours," she agreed. "Because your success was achieved on your own terms, which somehow made it feel more threatening." As the conversation flowed into the evening, I found myself reflecting on my personal growth over these past months. The weight of concealing my success had been heavier than I had realized. The liberation that came from being my authentic self with my family had not only transformed our relationships but also my own self-perception. I had released the need for their approval. Yet, ironically, in doing so, I had created an opportunity for them to offer it freely. I had established boundaries while still allowing for reconciliation, discovering strength in vulnerability instead of isolation. On a professional level, the changes had been equally significant. Coming forward as the face of Nexitech had initially attracted scrutiny, but ultimately it bolstered our market position. My experiences with my family had inspired new company policies that promote work-life balance and non-traditional career paths. I had started mentoring young entrepreneurs from backgrounds similar to mine, especially women whose ideas were often overlooked by traditional power structures. The fulfillment this brought was comparable to any acquisition or product launch. Most unexpectedly, Natalie and I had forged a collaborative relationship that leveraged our distinct strengths. Her marketing intuition complemented my technical vision. We transitioned from competition to collaboration, each of us finding security in our unique contributions. "Do you remember the garage?" my mother suddenly asked, interrupting my thoughts. The question might have once sparked anger or pain, but now I simply smiled. "Hard to forget. We converted it," my father said, "into a home office for when you come to visit. Heated floors, proper insulation, a desk with a view of the garden." The symbolism was clear, but it was heartfelt. The space that once represented my exclusion from the family now stood as a testament to their acceptance. "That's thoughtful," I said, genuinely moved by the gesture. As the stars twinkled above the lake, I reflected on how far we had traveled and the journey that still lay ahead. We weren't a flawless family. Occasionally, we slipped back into old habits, unintentionally hurting one another, yet we were evolving, maturing, and becoming more genuine with each other. The Christmas before had served as a crucible, burning away our facades and compelling us to truly see one another. The discomfort of that realization was essential, clearing the way for new growth. I discovered that success isn't solely defined by accomplishments, but by the authenticity of our relationships. It takes courage to be vulnerable and a willingness to surpass old boundaries. The real measure of success lies not in what you create, but in how you create it and who you become throughout the process. As my family got ready to depart, with promises of next month's gathering already being exchanged, I felt a serene satisfaction that no business achievement had ever given me. The garage that once served as my Christmas retreat was now just a faint memory, replaced by the warmth of true connection. Have you ever felt the need to conceal a part of yourself from family or friends? What would occur if they unexpectedly uncovered your hidden success or talent? I would love to hear your experiences in the comments. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that often, those who dismiss your dreams are the ones who most need to witness your success.